Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
Who's currently splitting sides. I was choosing my Instagram music for the episode. If not, check out our Instagram at CMTH Podcast. And Rob decided to change the lyrics to Foo Fighters Monkey Wrench.
Yes. I won't repeat them on the podcast, but it tickled me pink. Let's just say that.
And in case you didn't get the sporadic link there, we are here with the spoiler episode of The Monkey.
The Monkey, yes.
Yes, so we did our spoiler-free episode last week.
Last week, Friday, when it came out. So if you if you haven't seen The Monkey yet and you've just stumbled onto this episode, go and check out the spoiler-free, because I think we did pretty well to skirt around what is a film where you kind of need to talk about a lot.
Where it's literally non-stop spoilers of how people die. And we were trying, because, I think actually even the trailers did a pretty good job of trying to hide how people exactly die. Even if it gives you little teasers, it actually didn't give you the show.
Full,
so, which was actually good in this day and age to not have that. So
kept me on my toes.
So we didn't really go into specifics of deaths and things like that. We didn't go into specific of the twists that kind of play out in the film and the approaches to some of that. So I think we did a good job of talking for 20 minutes and telling you nothing.
Yeah, we did good.
That's our advertisement for the episode. We talked for 20 minutes and we told you fucking nothing.
Which I think can be true of all the episodes that we talk about.
There's nothing to get from
There's nothing to get. However, I would still encourage you to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review, because it does help the show grow and you get to just hear us talk absolute waffle. Absolute waffle. So we'll just get balls deep into The Monkey.
We're just going to jump straight into the story and the spoilers that we couldn't do last time. If you were hoping for a little slow
build.
If you were hoping for us to warm you up and give you that kind of, that foreplay before, that was our spoiler-free episode. Go and check that one out first. It will nice and warmly get you ready.
It'll get you ready
for us to go
pants down,
balls deep.
Yeah, that's the tactic.
And if you're disappointed that we haven't given our classic kind of ready, the monkey hangs down.
The monkey has that hairy dong.
The whole time he's clapping, he's smacking, he's
beating off.
He's just enjoying it so much. You don't get to see it, but it's highly implied that when he's banging that drum, inside that drum is his penis.
Yeah, he's just beating off.
And he's just going to town.
Interestingly enough, monkeys' penises, chimps, aren't covered in fur. So they're just these pink little things.
And you just told us that we get nothing from this podcast.
So if you want to know what a chimp's penis looks like, then you now know. Or you just Google it.
Or just Google monkey masturbation mega mix and enjoy your time.
And enjoy that banging soundtrack. That's a throwback.
And that is one.
That is one. I think, just getting straight into it. We spoke a little bit about, Osgood Perkins. We spoke about it being a Stephen King adaptation. So we will just get kind of straight into it. It was a lot more, that kind of black comedy than I expected. A lot of the deaths were quite funny. There was this kind of black humour to it.
I think after Longlegs being somewhat overly serious, it was
quite slow burn.
This is him going a completely different direction. Still horror, still thing, but this is fun horror compared to thrillerish kind of standard of the previous one. Supernatural thriller, I guess, also horror kind of that we've got a blend of. This is Final Destination meets, I don't know even how to describe what the kind of we're going for here. I said it was very much, it felt more inclining of something in the British tone of comedy at times than it does in an American kind of comedy. It felt maybe more like one of those horror comedies, maybe like something like Black Sheep or something like that. It's quite surreal at times, quite absurd. It's not that you can't follow this film and still have a standard point where you've got the main kind of story of Hal played by Theo James. You've still got a main story playing out, but everything is in this kind of quirky manner. Not just the way it looks, but the way we approach characters, the way we approach deaths. There's all this. It all has this kind of side of cheese, but not in a horrible cheesy way. It's this kind of odd that it's it is that black comedy of like everything's a little bit tongue in cheek. Everything's a little bit like you shouldn't take this fully seriously at any time. Which I think for the most part oddly works, because were a few times when I was thinking, is this going to just completely like derail, because it's just not. It can't seem to decide on its tone, and then I kind of embrace the fact that it's not going to. It's not going.
It's kind of. It is supposed to be quirky. You know, we spoke about that in Longlegs, but this, it feels like it adapts it. It leans into it a bit more. Yeah. So, for instance, you know, there's like to give one kind of spoiler. They're talking about, well, if we turn the key...
In our spoiler episode.
We're only only giving you one, and this is it. When they talk about, if you turn the key, does that cause somebody to die when they're young? And they turn the key, and then the next shot is Uncle Chip's funeral. You know, it's that kind of weird thing. They're not going to.
That's Osgood Perkins cameo, isn't it? The Uncle Chip.
Yeah, they're going to do like a quick cut, something like that, or his wife and Ida's death when she gets the fish hooks in the face, and then she puts the rum and alcohol on, and you're like, it's a great idea, and then
the gas is on, and she's like, and then she obviously leans. She goes up to it knowing that there's something wrong, but she decides to lean directly into it, and you're just like, okay. Of course that's what you do when you just put alcohol all over your face, and then boom, she's on fire.
It's Saw 2.
Yeah.
This is a weird door. I'm going to put my eye over the hole where I hear the clicking. You know, like obviously I'm going to get shot in the head.
Yeah.
It's
and she and again it's actually said after the scene, but she had things like she had a little flower pot left out the front because the realtor had left her things to be like, we're selling the house kind of thing. So she steps into that, causes her to trip, and then we get this awesome... What's also really cool about it, like that humorous to it, is not only that you get to enjoy the fact that she's had all this stuff happen to her, each one where you're like, well, that's overly obvious, and that's overly obvious, and then suddenly she trips, and then she gets proper full-on, like, head through a spike of a for sale sign.
Yeah.
But not only that, it pauses on that shot, so you just get to stare at it for a moment while they're having a kind of, and this happened, this is also what happened, kind of thing. So you're just kind of getting to enjoy the moment. And I think that's what they said in the last one, is that he seems to be taking gleeful amount of fun in the fact that actually, it's not just that he's defying expectation, but he's also doing it in a way like, okay, at this point in the film, you've got used to the idea that basically, something's going to happen, and some of them are a little bit more kind of this happens and this happens, and a little bit more setup.
Reaction.
And some of them are just like they just die. They just suddenly just die. It just happens like really fast. There's not really much setup. There's no accident. There's no reason. There's no final destination. A jug falls over, falls into this, runs into this tennis ball, flies through the air. There's none of that reaction most of the time. There's a few of those where it has little bits. But it seems like every time he gets to a point when he's like, you've seen this a couple of times now, so now we're going to swap it up.
Yeah.
Because it kind of gets when we've got a few of these like deaths, and it's like something happens and then something happens and they die. And then he kind of gets to the part in the film where he's like, so now we've done that. So we're not going to do that again.
Else.
Like that one that you said with his uncle, where it literally is just suddenly like, we're fully like, you seem like you're going to die pretty soon. They twist the thing, the brothers are talking like, who's going to die next? And then it just plays into the fact the audience is like, well, it seems like the uncle is probably going to die. Yeah. That's what's going on in your head. And he seems to have very much known exactly. He's like leading you to it like candy. And then you see it. And then there's also the part of you that then goes, but we didn't get to see it. And he's like, yeah, you do. Yeah. Here you go. So he changes up the order of the way he shows it to you, which again makes this film really fresh, because the one thing that you can get, and I remember when we exhaustively went through Final Destination and got fucking mind-numbingly done with that franchise for a long time, where I used to probably watch them quite regularly. I don't think I've watched a single one since we did those episodes.
I mean, this makes me want to watch them, but I agree, I'm kind of like...
It got so samey, and the formula couldn't get mixed up, and then we just and that's where that franchise had gone, where we were like, we know exactly what's going to come, and based on the most recent trailer for Final Destination, the new one where they show a scene, it feels like it's pretty much more of the same. That
I haven't watched it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's basically an entire death scene. The trailer's just one scene of the death,
well,
basically.
I would avoid it.
You can avoid that until you go to the cinema and they force you to watch it.
Yeah.
I don't mean like you could walk out, but they'll literally hold you down.
They'll hold me down. They'll clockwork orange me.
Yeah, and this is why I think that the one thing that's going for this is made by a director who I do think has a specific eye. Yes. He has a specific idea of what he wants to do. It's not the random flow of directors that they had for Final Destination after the first one. We're like, yeah, you can do it. You know, we just want random teens and death, so it doesn't matter. Anyone can do it. You directed something on MTV, right? Fucking do it.
Get him to do it.
This is someone who actually has actively pursued the idea of the story of Stephen King, you know, which, you know, I did say I'd mention that. I haven't got much to say about it because it mainly is, you know, the idea of the monkey. Accidents happen around it whenever they do it.
Yeah.
It very much is more implied in that you do it once and basically it's now stuck with you for life kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the monkey is with you. But the Stephen King novel has none of the gore and the setup. It's all just like accidents begin to happen around the same family. You know, the same boy, Hal, same characters in the story. We have some of the same deaths. I told you, like the mum dies from an aneurysm, but she doesn't bleed out her eyes. She's not literally choking on blood to death. It's just, and mum died. You know, mum died from an aneurysm. You know, we think this is to do with that. But there's none of that setup of like, actually, he wants to kill his brother. None of that kind of intention is there in the story. There's more just a generational fear of this idea of the monkey's back again. You know, which is here, and we get that with Theo James' character, where we've got a whole life lived basically in fear of the idea that he will come back again. Yeah. And we get quite an extended opening of, you know, their childhood. Yeah. More than I actually was expecting. It goes on for longer than I thought it was going to.
I thought it was just going to be then, because, you know, we get the first opening death and then the dad splits, and I thought we were going to get like just a quick thing, maybe one death with the monkey. Yeah. And then maybe we get quick shots, or by the time they're adults, which will be relatively quickly, we'll already establish that a lot of people have died around them. But instead, I mean, we get a good maybe like 20 minutes, and within that we get about 3 or 4 deaths. Yeah. You know, we get quite a few.
Yeah, and it's setting up this kind of the twins. Yeah. Where we've got Hal and Bill, you know, and they both pretty quickly, it's set up of this, you know, that they kind of hate each other. And again, it's a dark relationship. You know, one of the first things we see is Bill's fantasy of dropping a bowling ball on his brother's head, and you get to see it actually go fully into his like face. You know, so again, expelling those kind of fears of this isn't going to be gory. You know. Yeah. And, you know, and again, that's one's actually fairly, like, bloodless. So kind of early on, they're not, like, mega, like, bloody. And then, again, we change it up. We get more bloody ones that suddenly are mega bloody. You know what I mean? Like, suddenly goes, oh, you think they're not going to be that bloody? Here you go. Boom.
Lead into it.
You know what I mean? Because, like, again, like, the first, that opening, which is really good. We said about the cameo of
Mr. Adam
Scott. We didn't say who it was, and spoiler free.
Yeah.
But Mr. Adam Scott, where I remember, like, I was like, oh, that's Adam Scott. And then I like watched. I was like, he hasn't realised yet. So I'm just going to watch you for a second. I was watching your reaction. Go, is that Adam?
That's Mr. Adam. Yeah, that's fucking Adam.
You like
Scott.
look for him like you waited for him to turn slightly to a different angle. Like, that's Mr. Adam.
That's
Scott.
Mr. Adam Scott, as I live and breathe.
Yeah, and a nice like setup of like that he's brought this upon. You know, he's kind of brought this into his kids' lives and things like that, and he wants rid of it. He doesn't want them to be in that kind of thing. And, you know, we have the nice setup with the dealer. And the one thing about this was, you know, as I said in the spoiler-free episode, was the idea that, you know, it felt like this was going to be like, again, you've got that arrow that's shown pretty quickly, so you're like, okay, that's definitely going to play into it. Yeah. You've got the rat on the wall, so this one's a bit more Final Destination in a kind of something has to happen for that to then happen. You know, we get a little something knocked over. We get the rat that gets moved towards the rope, bites it. You know, and you've got a nice little kind of a set-up scene, but the arrow goes in, and you kind of expect that to be it. Like the arrow's gone through, not greatly bloody. You know, just a little arrow in the wall, and you're thinking, you know, this is what I was thinking. Is this is a 15, and we're not.
I see the 15 certificate. Yeah. I'm thinking, all right, that's it. He's dead. He's cooked.
Yeah, and you know, it seems really weird. You know, again, the dialogue is something that again you're either going to be into it or you're not, because straight away, like Adam Scott's dialogue that he's saying to him is really kind of weird and a bit like obscure in his language, and like the way he's talking seems a bit like that's not really the way that people normally talk.
No.
This is a very kind of obscure way of this is a niche kind of way of talking, discussing something with someone. But so the guy gets it through the gut, and then the most fun part is when it tells you, this isn't going to be as gore light as you think, because then the guts start getting pulled back when the thing retracts.
Yeah.
And the gut just across the whole
Which is
thing.
awesome.
Followed by just Adam Scott going fucking insane with a flamethrower on a monkey.
Yeah. And I think it sets the tone for the film.
It does. It's really over the top and weird, and you've even got him doing this high cackling laughter of it really what the fuck's going on? Some kind of weird Inglourious Bastard style kind of over the top at points.
Yeah.
It's really it's a fun scene. Although at the same time, I guess if you're watching the rest of the film, you feel the whole it sounds like the dad has brought it into the children's life as if he knew that he was in the children's life, as if this is a scene that took place later in the film that we were going to come back to. It's a weird one, it's talked about, but it felt like we were maybe getting a scene that comes get a scene early that then will pop up later, but we don't. We never see anything.
We never do, because we
never get Adam Scott again.
We get the Adam Scott left because he wanted to distance himself from it.
Yeah,
but it is very much kind of does give the implication that Adam Scott's already seen many people die. But then he does mention he doesn't want it involved with his kids. He doesn't want his kids around it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that's just a bit of a thing where
it's a fun cameo. It's a fun little cameo. It's a fun little setup scene. It gives you the idea of the terror and the suddenly, and it nicely sets up that kind of sudden dread of the monkey suddenly going off. It's one of the scenes where the dread of the sudden monkey setting up works. When maybe the more it goes on, the less that works.
Well, we said about that in the spoiler-free one, and one thing that, and I don't know whether it is a kind of a detraction for me from the film, but I don't know whether there wasn't. I was expecting more creepiness and more horror and more of a bit maybe you've got to be a little bit on edge here, or maybe it's got to be a little bit spooky, but instead I feel like it was very much give Final Destination a better story with some more focused themes on it, instead of, like you said, just teenagers who survive an accident and let's just kill them as quick as we can, and then do some of these deaths. And instead of having Tony Todd turn up and be Rip King, and be you can't escape death. Instead of that, just have a monkey banging a drum, and you can't get rid of it. That's kind of, and that's what it felt like. And it's weird because I didn't know until we watched the trailer for this, before we watched, Heart Eyes, that was the vibe, that it was rather Final Destination and accident based. I had no clue what was going to happen in this. So I feel like if I hadn't have watched the trailer, I would have seen that opening and been like, what the fuck? Is this the film?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, because even though I did say it didn't, the first trailer for this was completely so obscured. It just looked like a bloody, it just had blood splatters and things like that. But it gave you no idea whatsoever what was going on. So if you came in with absolutely no idea, you would be very what the fuck? The only thing I would say for it is that the second trailer slightly sells a bit more of the odd humour. Yeah. Which, again, for some people, if they went in with no context that it was going to be slightly kind of odd in its humour, they might be a bit more what the fuck am I... as much as that bit works, this bit, I don't like this bit because I'm not prepared for it kind of thing. So it's that odd balance of
an odd balance,
But you're right. If you had no idea, this would seem extremely what the hell? This is crazy. This is just madness kind of going on around us. But the monkey... the monkey kind of... I said previously, the monkey would be dependent on how much you kind of get drawn into that kind of character. It wasn't a part it's a setup, and I do like the little setup at the moment when he starts drumming. It gets you it's almost like you're warm up, you're ready for it. Yeah, but that's not in the terrifying way. That's just because I'm there's a death coming. Yeah, there's a kill coming. It was more my I'm ready to go kind of thing. You know what I mean? Hooray! and that's one thing where like the monkey itself, the said monkey, is the one part that like it just wasn't like it didn't actually feel as like tension filled as I actually thought it was going to make it feel. I think even actually in the book there's one element it does add, which is like that Hal, and again I'm not saying I would have adapted this, but he has conversations as if he's the monkey who's giving him like ideas in his head. Yeah. And there's one way in which you're like, is it actually the monkey, and is it actually, or is it Hal who's just going through all of the different things that could happen? Like your mother will die like this, your brother's going to die on the way home like this is going to happen. And it's all playing out as if there's a... So the monkey kind of has a slightly more like mental role that in fucking with his head. Yeah. Whereas that's all kind of just, I guess, assumed here that like the tension of the thing. A lot of that kind of psychological element is kind of removed from this film. There's not really much of the apart from the idea that yes, you're kind of terrified by it. He's decided to steer clear very much of what could have added a slightly more serious note to some of the characters, of the idea of the psychological effects of these things. Quite a lot of that is all kind of played as a joke. Yeah, because
all of the deaths that he witnesses, he's just kind of like,
okay. It is all very much like, damn, okay, there's another one,
that's another one. You know?
Which works to keep it fresh and fun in a way, I think.
Yeah, I guess, and given that he knows about it, and he has effectively shaped his life around these accidents and avoiding death.
He's really not phased by the time they come around. He's an adult. He's like, this is just, I'm just going. I'm not hanging around for this.
Yeah, like the real estate agent gets fucking shotgunned. Yeah, and he's shocked, but it's like he knew it was kind of coming.
Even standing in the blood and the like being covered in it, he's just like, this is like a Tuesday for me. Yeah, this is just the day to day. You know what I mean? Like, the way he gets out of there. I mean, like one of the most fun deaths. Which again is played in the trailer, but I think the aftermath of where it goes does not go into your head because it's such a quick one, is the swimming pool. Yes. That one was the one in the trailer where I was like, well, you've just given that away, because your head just thinks she's going to jump in and get fried or get things. It's the fact that she jumps in and bang, like a balloon, she just bursts.
Yeah, like, this is incredible.
You're just like, that's so over the top, and that's so 100% probably not what would actually happen at all. She would just like go in and just get shocked and die, or maybe get a bit southern fried. Yeah. But you know what I mean. But instead, it's just the fact you go bang and the leg like flies just missing him, and it's like, fucking hell, that's like, that is just, it was like, I think, and also because that was a little bit when we'd first introduced his character, so we hadn't had any deaths. So that was like the burst back into it. Like, here you go, guys, we're not done with the death kind of thing.
And the deaths, they come really quite thick and fast. During Hard Eyes, we were saying that you get the opening, and then you get quite a long, a long building of the focus on the rom-com. Whereas I feel like in this, there was a point, and it's when we get to the aunt's death, where I was like, we've had like 4 or 5 deaths in half an hour. I was thinking, fucking Jesus Christ,
Yeah, and they do seem to like, especially around the middle. I'd say with the ants, kind of quite gory one, the swimming pool. Those ones actually they feel like in the middle there they got quite like, they go quite balls to the wall with the gore. Yeah. And then after that, they're just like, once he's an adult, they just mainly just seem to be like, we're just gonna keep serving them at you, because there are points when you feel like we're at this point now, so there's no chance of getting more gore kind of coming, because this is not going to really work. But he still finds ways to slot them in. Like I said, one of the bits I really loved, which again I just love to see more do it, and that's the same thing. My heart eyes came into my eyes at that point. Yeah, it came into my head thinking like, this is what I want to do. Just a quick kind of. We want to just see a bit more of the effect that Heart Eyes had on the community, or just seeing like one of the scenes where it mentions a death, and you're like, well, you could have shown us that. I feel like that wouldn't have broken it up that badly, and it does exactly here. It does a montage of 5 different deaths that have happened in the community, and there's a lot of death overall, really. But the fact that you just get a quick snippet in kind of a. I guess something like in my head, something like Zombieland popped into my head. Where like Kill of the Week, where they had that kind of thing. It's literally like, on Monday that we had this one, and they're really, really like fun ones as well. Like you got a snake coming out of a golf hole.
Snake's great. I think it's going to be a crocodile. Yeah, or a gator. It's a fun little subversion.
And again, it's slightly more gory than you think, because the snake comes up biting it. You're like, well, that's not going to be that. And suddenly it's like black ooze and red blood, and it's just like, Jesus Christ. You know, you get all different kinds. You've got like the neck gouging. You've got the face burning with the steam of a coffee. You've got a lawnmower that's just like, and again, the weird humour of like the guy's getting completely mutilated under a lawnmower, and there's a guy just drinking a beer in shock, like as if he's just like there. And they're all just like really like fun in that way, and it's kind of interesting that, you know, the first one is quite, although it's graphic, it's quite bloodless.
Yeah.
And then we get the babysitter who gets her head chopped off, which was not my favourite one, only because it felt like there was nothing. It didn't even feel like it completely worked. Like the guy had the blade, and it felt like he sliced it. And it didn't seem. That was the only one actually out of all of them where I was a bit like, that kind of didn't like. I couldn't really see why the blade went so far to slice her whole head off.
There were a couple, to be honest. I was like, that one. I was like, I get that, but there was the one later on where I was like, that just goes against the logic of the film. Yeah. You know, like with everything you've established. But finish your point and I'll tell you about that.
Well, to be fair, I think that was mainly my point, is that I was just trying to point out one that I was like, that one, there's lots of deaths, lots of different styles of death. They try different ways, but this is the one when it like actually like breaks that kind of, you know, in my head I was just like, that's the only one that felt like so far everyone's had this like setup and stuff like that, so it's fine because it's also establishing that people die in different ways. The monkey chooses, and so we get very early on, we have the boys trying to specifically choose, like he tries Hal specifically, and it's quite a linchpin point for the film. You know, he hates his brother's a jerk, he's a bully, and he's like, I'm going to use this monkey and I'm going to, you know, the babysitter's collateral damage for them the first time they do it, but this one is specifically, I'm going to kill it, and instead of it killing Bill, it kills their mother. Yeah, you know, in a kind of gory kind of blood pouring down her face aneurysm. But you know, that's, you know, what we get established. So we get established rules quite quickly that you don't get to choose. The monkey chooses. Yeah. But it still feels that it has to be somewhat related to the people who are there. It has to be someone within your world that you know. Otherwise, it would just be like, well, some bloke in India died.
Some random Indian dude.
They just shot across, you know, to some guy over there.
No disrespect to our listeners in India, because we do have some.
And that rule then has to be established. It has to be someone around.
It's just some random. You'd be fucking doing that all the time. It's like the thing of
you wouldn't care.
You wouldn't care. It's like when they say, "Oh, would you press a button?" But you know,
someone you don't know would die.
£10,000, but somebody you don't know dies. Yeah, fucking back. I'll be doing it. I'll be pressing it every day. I don't care. Sorry, I don't know.
You know? Yeah, that's it. Someone you said don't know, so you can't twist it on me. I do not know them.
I do not know them. I'm making an effort to not know them. But yeah, I think for me the one that I didn't like was Rowan Campbell's one.
I see. Yeah.
I felt that it just felt like lazy and like very anti the monkey. You know, like the idea that
the rest of them seemed more natural, whereas that one seemed completely more super. I don't know. There was just something odd about it. Yeah, there was something odd about it.
It was something just like, I get that, you know, they're toying with this hornet's nest, this wasp nest, so you're like, oh, it's got to be that. And he's itching his head with the gun, and then you think, oh, he's going to shoot himself, and then he pops a bullet and it hits the hornet's nest, and you're like, oh, okay. And then the hornets just rush in a perfect stream and
basically you broke our nest, so we're going to use you as the nest now. It's basically how I thought of it, kind of thing, in a kind of effects heavy kind of scene. Yeah, that, you know, it has a gory aftermath.
Oh yeah, the gore was good, but it just felt very much like everything is supposed to be.
To be honest, I felt every scene with him felt a bit like, it felt a bit hard. Like, it felt like it didn't flow nicely. A lot of his scenes, like his intention for taking them, you know, felt overly like, it was one of those where I was like, I know there are a lot of like odd choices in this film. There are a lot of different versions, but like the whole like, my daddy left and I'm going to wear a police thing, and then you get the kind of one where like sometimes it feels like it's obscure and niche and like interesting and it's kind of jokey tongue-in-cheek humor. Yeah. And then sometimes it just feels a bit dumb. Like the fact that he opens the door to Rowan Camp's character, and then they also have to establish the fact that you're not a cop, as if like, and you're just like, you're not.
Like, you look for the window, and he's,
you know, you can clearly see that it's not him. You know what I mean? Like, he's barely, you know. And it's one of those it's a few of those scenes where I guess where it goes between the line of like the dark humour of taking this out of death and things like that to just having characters that are just a bit stupid.
Yeah.
And Rowan Campbell's character, not to the actor, just his character just comes across as overly dumb and kind of pointless for the most part. Apart from to get him to that scene, the only reason he's there is to have the monkey that he can then give to the Bill character.
Yeah.
You know, again, which could have happened in any other way. You know, you could have just had Bill and the thing. So all of the scenes that kind of include him, I think could have been removed and it would have made almost no effect, except for the fact that you had to take Phil. And all you had to do was basically have another reason because, to be fair, it felt like he was going there anyway.
Yeah.
It felt like the Hal character was leading that way anyway because he started to realise he had to stop Bill. He wasn't just running away from it anyway. I didn't get the feeling he fully was going to run away. So forcing him to have to go there, and then the whole like he sat in the thing, and they even have the scene where he's like, "Oh, turn on the lights to look at the thing," and he's like, "Oh, turn it off. That's horrible," or like that's gross, or something like that. And I'm just like, the reactions it just didn't work for me. And again, I can't say specifically if it was the performance of Rowan Campbell or the way the character was written. Yeah. But it just didn't. He's the one character out of everyone that 100% fully just felt
like it didn't really work
and felt unneeded. Like you could have cut those scenes. Could have been cut. You could have got yourself a nice, even brisker hour and 34 minutes because the film isn't that long. To be fair to it, it moves at a pretty good pace. Yeah. Those were the only major scenes where there was like an odd lull. Not that there weren't a few other kind of character decisions or dialogue where I was like, some
of the dialogue I felt particularly from like the mum in particular just felt a bit like
overly like for the scene where she has the where she's talking about death where they're both looked over, where they're both like leaning against her after the funeral of the baby,
doing an ice cream,
and when she makes comments in other scenes, to be fair, about like death or being quite like dour about their dad and stuff, I thought it was okay. But when it was that scene, it just
felt a bit
felt like a rambling as well. It felt like a rambling scene of like, I don't why, and you're also like, why would you say this to their sons? I get in this you're trying to be like people are kind of, I don't know if you're trying to say that people are generally just like don't care in this world, or if they're just a bit of an asshole mainly in this world, or what they're trying to get out. But
it just came off as a bit cringy, you know. I was watching and she was like, you know, I'll die one day and you'll die and all your friends will die, and you know, death happens and accidents happen and it's shit, but that's just how life is. And I get it, it's, you know, that's kind of the point of it, and that it's supposed to come full circle later on. But I was watching it and I was like, this is a bit like written by a 14-year-old, kind of making me cringe, you know. And I get a lot of the other characters do have this oddball quirkiness, and that's kind of her thing, is that maybe that's just how she talks. But watching it, I was a bit like, ugh.
But yeah, that's what I mean. Like some work can work things like, for instance, like Theo James works because he is somewhat of the straight man, as if he's the one looking in this world like, what the hell is constantly going on around me. And even when he's a kid, he's still somewhat of like the normal one, surrounded by extremely over the top, like a brother who's overly like, you know, not serious and seems to think everything is both a joke, but he's also a little bit psychotic at times. You know, surrounded by bullies that are kind of odd. You know, like we've got a weird group of bullies kind of thing in these situations that happen. And just other characters, but some of them were bad. For instance, that cameo by Osgood Perkins is the thing when he says about them being swinging and stuff was generally funny. I people were laughing at that bit kind of thing. Some of those little side kind of comments about how we're not great at things, or this is going to be bad, or you know, things, generally kind of work. Even when Theo James is trying to explain things like about the whole how it worked with his son and stuff, is oddly like this is really weird, but it's not bad at the same time. It's like it kind of works in this.
It's a bit awkward, kind of humourish
And it worked. Like even we get Elijah Wood as well in like a scene where again we both said we expected that to come back around. It felt like it was a natural setup for a death within the world of them.
Yeah.
That doesn't come back around, because he's played up as a kind of, at first he's played up like the perfect father, and then he comes across as an asshole by the end of it, kind of thing, as a character. Which, I like seeing Elijah Wood pop up in anything, to be honest. He's a nice little refreshing piece, but again, his dialogue went at first from this oddly quirky, like over nice, like I'm the father of the year kind of guy. Yeah. And then when it tried to go into more of the odd, like, arm wrestling kind of stuff, it started to feel like this scene's gone on too long now. It's odd. A little bit, And then you've got the weird dynamic with the son as well. Yeah. I know you said you weren't sure about the son.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I don't think it was the performance. I think it was more just slightly being maybe under fleshed out. And I get the idea of the relationship is to be that they, that they haven't, they haven't spent a lot of time together. He particularly has only got to, spend one day a year with him, or see him once a year, whatever it is. But it's the fact that like all this has happened, and it's got to the point where we're getting to the final act. Well, we're in the final act, and you're going to send your son into this house or into this kind of fucking weird, like hotel den that your estranged brother, who he didn't know about, is hiding, and there's all this monkey, and you haven't even told him about the monkey. It was that kind of thing of like, at some point he should have just been like, "There's this monkey," and it just felt like by the end of the film, like
it did. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like it did feel constantly like it was like, you haven't really got this thing. If he thinks you're crazy, then it doesn't really matter because you pretty much seem to have given up on anything that's going to go further with this. So why not just tell him?
Yeah.
Why not just get it over with? Like it feels like you're just pushing it. Like, and him being like, well, to be fair, the swimming pool one he doesn't really see because he gets them out of that. I don't think he really gets to see any of that. No. But he does see the one in the house, and at that point it's like, come on, we could just tell him at this point. Like, like it's one part of the storyline that's almost like it almost borders on frustrating when it's like, I know that you're like trying to keep him out of your life, so you're being overly like, I'm not going to tell. But it also sometimes makes you feel a bit frustrated. You're like, you're keeping stuff from him that doesn't really seem like it has that much importance.
Yeah.
Like I know the monkey does, but at the same time, you know what I mean? You know that this could chase you, so it also feels like
you should probably tell.
Yeah, you should probably like, because you might die, and then it may just start appearing for him anyway, because he seems to have like stuck around with your family now.
Yeah, so it's an odd choice.
Yeah. It is, but it also doesn't. The main thing I'd say like is that like overall though, it still didn't feel like it completely took away from the experience. Like,
no.
I think you're having does such a good array of like death that's constantly coming, and it does keep coming no matter, even when, like we said in that final act, like it wasn't the best one, but at least we still had another death scene that came even in that final act when it felt like we were mainly almost done with them. And then we had an additional death once we have that twist that plays out. But it keeps it so quick and fast with those that I feel like it doesn't linger on things long enough to be like you're going to have a bad taste in your mouth, because you just don't think about it. Like, no. If you watched it a second time, maybe there'd be a bit more glaring in your mind, or maybe you'd just be like, yeah, it is what it is. I accept. I accept it.
I take it on. Take it on the chin.
I think overall, people will find that they, are really enjoy this film. I could see this getting a little kind of cult status, but as I said, it might even do very well. So cult might not be the word, because it might actually pull off quite well. Long Legs did very well, so they're very much pushing that it's the same director. But if you're expecting the same film, you're in a very different like realm here, I think, with this idea. But I do think, as I said, from what I've read of the Stephen King, it both stays fairly true to the original idea, but kind of just ups the ante of the horror and the gore and the death in quite a few ways. I'm trying to figure out what's of the next kind of main is, I guess we kind of glossed a little bit past the childhood. It does, it goes on for quite a while. In my mind, I don't know why, I thought this was going to be a bit more of a jump back and forth between adult and child.
Oh, no, I thought it was going to be straight.
You thought it was going to be straight and a bit faster. I wasn't sure whether it was going to jump about, because I knew it was a more generational kind of tale. So I thought like the original story, it might go a bit more back and forth. But yeah, so obviously we've had the whole setup of like once Bill and Hal finally come together as children, they decided to try and like get rid of it, so they throw it down a well, and we've come back. So then that all kind of builds up to know all of the death and things we've had, and the things with the son. To, I guess the final act is kind of the bit where like the twist of the brother. Yeah. We've got the brother kind of who pops up on the phone throughout, also played by Theo James, and he's added some little quirks to make him somewhat different. The same way that the actor doing both parts, the young boy, the boy. Not only they've both got different wigs, but they've got a like slight different. And we get the idea, that actually Bill is the one that has got the monkey again. Yeah, the monkey did not reappear to him, and he went looking for it, but it never reappeared. It's only reappeared to the Ricky character who was at the yard sale when it's finally appeared. The only thing he had was the key this whole time, and finally he's now basically decided to unleash hell because he's basically hoping that sooner or later it's just going to kill his brother. So he does everything because he wants him to kill his brother, because he realizes that his brother tried to kill him / ended up killing his mother. So because the beginning leads so much into the story, kind of mainly of the brothers hating each other and stuff like that. This doesn't feel like an out there kind of twist.
It didn't feel like an odd twist. It felt like a natural twist.
Yeah, and it's also played up in quite. What I did quite enjoy is the fact that the brother is not played up as some, genius or some kind of crafting thing. If anything, we see that he's a really quite pathetic person.
Just like an obsessed loser.
Yeah, he's a complete. You get him in like the Chinese like strip clubs. Yeah, he's got a goddamn.
Like a weird mullet
kind of thing going on. He dresses like Slim Shady in the 90s. Yeah, he still dresses like someone from the 90s. He's still got the hats and the glasses, and it's all like he's never left who he was previously. He is the classic, like he was kind of popular in high school, and he still is that exact same person, and he's never left that moment when all those people died and he got taken away from when he was popular. Yeah, he's stuck in that moment, including the great, and I absolutely love the fact that he does the suit. He says when he's a kid, I'm just going to stay in this suit because I'm going to be, because there's going to be another death or more death coming. And the fact that he comes to it and we have the whole setup, that he was in his aunt's house and he was the one that restarted the whole chain reaction as adults. So the monkey did have to be started again. It hasn't just naturally come out of nowhere. We even get the implication it's related to the Chinese year of the monkey. Nice little kind of touches, but nothing that is overly exposition. It's all quite fast.
All quite up to you as well.
Which is nice, because it is one of those things where you can get an exposition boatload and you're like, and
it gets rid of the horror.
It does. It takes away from it too much. And this one does very much play several kind of humorous scenes, like the strip club when he leans down and it's a stripper's got a monkey head and things like that. You can't get away from it. But the fact that the suit is like, he says that he remakes the suit, and it has this whole scene that kind of implies like, re-sewed it to make it to the right size, and he's just taken his shitty fire t-shirt and he just looks like he's still in this tiny shirt as if he's fitted it in the worst way possible.
It's horrendous.
And he's got his mullet, and he just looks like a mess.
Yeah, he looks like absolute shit.
And he's set up like a little hideout, and he's got the monkey on top as his little thing, and he's set booby traps like he's still in Home Alone. Yeah. You know what I mean? It is very like as if, like, again, like, I like the fact that it's very much implied, like, even the stuff in there, it's like, this dude is stuck in the 90s. Yeah. He has not left the 90s, and he still is trying to, like, almost like, he's still blaming his brother for every single goddamn thing, which is somewhat, for me, because I could get into that angle of it, is why, his whole like thing about blaming everything, and he's been stuck in this because of, his brother, because his mum died, somewhat worked for me only because I could get in that mindset of like, it's not just the mum, it's the fact that he's living in the past. He was taken away from his life. He was this great guy before, and obviously it did not work out as soon as he moved to the new place. Yeah. But I think if you don't look from, if you didn't see it from that perspective, I could see how this could be a mixed bag of a twist.
Reveal or a twist.
Yeah.
No, I could see that. Yeah. I was very much in the same mindset as you.
Yeah, I think it works. The brother, like the brother, makes sense. The fact that he's like kind of, whether it's told or whatever it is, however he knows, it's not really made clear. As if like again, maybe the monkey talked to him. I don't know. Yeah. Whatever he's hearing, but you know that for the most part kind of works. You know, the whole final act to the secret layer, is kind of as I said, the setup to get them there didn't like.
No, it feels a bit flimsy.
I liked the little booby trap things because again it made me think of like as if that was meant to be a Home Alone throwback or something like that. Like oh shit, and his son kind of going into there, and we have the whole he wants his son to do it because he's hoping if his son does it, it will kill the father.
Get him. Yeah.
And another really cool part is that after he's got his son, he's got to his son and they're trying to get out of there, and then we get this man-child that he is, Bill, tries to basically fight the monkey, and the monkey kicks his ass.
Yeah.
The monkey throws him across the room. But the banging on the drum, I didn't think of what that meant when it happened. No. And I was generally like, okay, that now that that's clicked, I was like, Jesus, that was actually extremely cool.
Yeah.
The monkey, obviously, like, to get back at him after all the stuff that he's been kind of using the monkey for, and now he's gone against the monkey bangs the drum like 50, 60 times. He's just really quickly bang, 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 bang. And it feels like the monkey... I thought at first the monkey was doing something to kill Bill. As in, like, he was building to something, like, as if it was suddenly going to go... and Bill was just going to, like, explode or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So over the top.
His death was coming.
Yeah. But instead, we suddenly just hear, like, what the fuck's going on? There's noises of screaming and planes... And in a really cool shot for a film that's only about 10 million budget, again it does some pretty good practical work and definitely. A few CGI, and again the bug thing was not the best use of the CGI budget, I would say. But seeing you see a plane crash, you see buildings on fire, people screaming and shouting, and then you get people who have obviously jumped from the plane coming through the roof.
Yeah, which is fucking
the bride falls and breaks her neck. You've got the groom that lands and gets splattered on the floor.
It's insanity.
It's just insanity, but it added a really fun aspect to it. A scene where I was like, is this just a straightforward, final
there was some sinisterness to it as well. You know?
It's how dark you really think about it. And after this scene, we get additional, that bunch of it is as dark as you think. We get some nice extra, just some extra added death aftermath, which you just love to see. So the one thing in this scene that definitely didn't work as well, where people I could hear other people in the cinema going, that makes no fucking sense. What's going on? The people literally commenting, I could hear them commenting on it. Was that at the same time that explanation that I did it because your brother, and then he has this really overly stupid scene of, oh, I never thought of you're my brother and he says you're my, he's like, Hal explains to him that, but it's my mother too, and I'm your brother, and things like that. And then Bill says, I never thought of that you're my brother and that's my mother, and I never thought, which could have absolutely worked, but there's something about the delivery that makes it seem overly stupid from the Bill character that made it seem dumb. I don't think it is actually people do forget, that they get so driven by their
wrapped
events.
up in their own kind of trauma, and so wrapped up in their own stuff that they forget about the ripple effect and that kind of thing. And so I agree with you on that, but it was the delivery. The delivery made it seem as if he was like, oh yeah, she was your mum as well, as opposed to oh yeah, she was your mum as well. Yeah, because that kind of thing.
I guess that's the hard line when you're building the idea that this is almost a man-child, but he's also managed to do a lot of things that are beyond that show intelligence.
Yeah.
So then when he's going back to being this kind of man-child reaction, it's a little bit, which is then followed up by the joke, the old classic, go for the hair, which again, that one slightly works because it was set up earlier in the film, so it's kind of funny, and then it overdoes the joke, which is kind of part of the joke. Which is the point. Do you overdo the joke?
Because you know he's going to die as soon as he's up,
But there's just something about that scene altogether that makes it seem a bit where we lean again into, the Ricky character slightly. It's one of those scenes where it goes away from clever humour based on death and things around them.
Yeah.
Or clever kind of moments of that character's weird, the uncle character, with its dialogue where actually that's kind of funny. to just overly dumb.
And just a bit too much.
Yeah, like, and it was just a bit too much. Like, you've established it, you've done it. I don't think you needed to.
It was funny the first time.
Yeah,
you know, like,
it was funny at the time.
I get the second time he's kind of like, he's still a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah.
But then you're like,
third time, yeah. And it's playing up that man child, and I do get it, but it's also a bit of like, it felt like it made people in the audience cringe. Like, it was a bit too much on there, you know. It's a bit too leaning heavily into that humour. And then we get another chain reaction death, followed by the bowling ball Lois, the mum thing, crushing his head into the wall.
And obviously goes back to Hal's fantasy
of how to kill him. So it kind of brings it full circle. That's what I mean. I feel like we didn't overly talk about too much. Like, generally, I really enjoyed this film.
Yeah.
You know, I would recommend anyone, and if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, why?
Yeah, especially if you're this far.
If you're this far for you should have stopped by now. But again, with this kind of film, though, even knowing it, seeing it is a different thing. So there's an enjoyment to be had either way. But, it's... I think for the most part that, you know, you have to get in the wavelength of how
you gotta lock in.
You've got to be with it. It's not going to be for everyone. No. The death part probably will be for most horror fans, but the humour part and the way, the characterisation and the way they show it is not going to be for everyone. You've got to either get into this is going to be a totally odd film, but that, you know, for the most part, I think works. In some scenes, just doesn't.
Yeah.
You know. But overall, I think for certain that kind of came out of the blue and, again, a lot of people didn't know about, I feel like this is going to be a huge surprise. And I still wouldn't be surprised if I get to the end of the year and I actually think that this is one of my more favoured films of the year.
Yeah, I can see that definitely. I don't think it's a perfect film, and there are definitely flaws to it. But it's a really good time. It's quite unique as well. I think his method or his way of filmmaking is still relatively quite unique to it. There was Longlegs I wasn't a particularly big fan of. I preferred this. I feel like it fit better with his style of filmmaking. Yeah,
I think as even like him, the parts I do know of him as an actor, even this plays more into like stuff he'd previously done. I think it's it's also, I guess, someone who's, you know, although he's been within the film industry for a very long time, this is still like like very early in his actual directing career. So both of these films, to have these two as early on, I think he's still goddamn well. Like, if he maybe works on the writing and the craft, you know, if he hones down some of these elements a little bit more, he can have a truly like incredible, probably films that can continue to come if he can keep up that kind of, you know, and just a little bit more like honing some of it a little bit, like of that kind of over reliance on his obviously quite odd style of humour that he's got in himself, you know, and that's not a bad thing. It is what makes this film unique. It is also what makes it not feel bogged down overly by lots of exposition that isn't needed. Like, for the most part, you know, it works really well, I think. And as I said, you know, and it does have, you know, very odd. The final part of the scene, I love the fact that we get to see the aftermath. We have a burning baby in a cot. We have a guy that's got a surfboard through him into a tree, you know. You've got, and I'm sure there's loads I even missed, because it seems like it's packed full of death in the background. I remember seeing like there's like another like a tractor in the background that's burning blood. You know, and I absolutely love that final shot, which felt very Final Destination, of the cheerleader girls who were so excited that there was like, the town was literally excited that there was death, something happening in their town, that they were cheering to it, that we get them beheaded at the very end. But again, you also get the very odd horse scene. Yeah. Where I think everyone in the cinema was like, what the fuck does this mean?
Well, they mentioned death riding on a pale horse. Yeah, you know? But I was watching it and I was
it's literal.
It's literal. I was like, okay.
And it's another mashing of a tone, where it's like, suddenly it's like, we've gone with this, which, you know, not to say it's not supernatural, it's about a monkey that can kill people. But, you know, it's just a sudden, like, a lot of that. So yeah, it is the literal personification of like their death as well. We're just that. Like, this is it. Like, we're just throwing it all out there, and it's just like a mad mix. And it does feel like a mentally, like, just insane kind of ride that you go through. But yeah, as I said, I really enjoyed it. It's probably of the films we've seen so far this year, it's my favourite horror film I've seen so far this year.
Fair enough.
I rate it above the. I feel like there was more enjoyment and fun than any of the others that we've seen so far, and I didn't hate any of the ones we've seen so far. To be fair, I was pretty happy with most of them. So but I just think that this had the most fun mix, and in terms of just death and gore, and get to actually enjoy it. Actually enjoying the idea of showing death and playing with it. And the way that he kind of mixes it up so it doesn't feel samey, it feels very different throughout the film. It does feel like he kind of changes the tone or the style of how people die, or cutting to a scene of him himself getting absolutely barraged by horses or bulls or whatever the hell it was, until he's literal cherry pie or whatever slop on the ground. That's fun, and it plays in, and scenes like that were extremely funny and fun, And I think that's what I was kind of looking for, this kind of less dour, dark kind of. Heart Eyes had that last week as well. The first two that we had, Nosferatu and Wolfman, were much darker, kind of dour, kind of, not what you'd call a fun time film at the cinema. We've had two more dour ones, two more upbeat and fun ones, and this is the one that's probably melded the most for me, where I'm I like this, I could watch this again, and I'd like to see more of this style, I guess, for now.
I think I would.
But there's many more horrors coming, so...
It would, but I think I concur. Yes. To summarise. Come and let us... you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at CMTH Podcast. If you've seen The Monkey, come and let us know what you thought about it. Remember to hit that subscribe button, and please leave us a lovely review. If you do happen to stumble across a wind-up monkey, just leave that shit alone. Don't even bother. Leave it. Remember, it'll penis.
Kill your mum.
It'll kill your mum. Its penis will be pink and hairless, so you don't even need to touch it to inspect and find that out. We've already told you that. Don't worry. So just leave it be. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye bye.